Hello, Patrick Jones, and hello, Patrick Jones's class. This is Deb Taylor, Coordinator of School and Student Services at the Pratt Library and a former YALSA president. Patrick has been good enough to ask me to respond to a few questions about young adult literature, and I'm happy to do that. The first question is, what is YA Lit? And what is the definition of YA Lit, and what's in and what's out? When I first started in young adult services, YA literature was always considered to be whatever teenagers would read. And so we felt free to pull from children's or adult or the YA collection that we had, which was somewhat limited. Now YA literature has grown to its own body, its own field, and I would say YA literature is a body of work that has been written, targeted for an age group, early adolescence through young adulthood, that focuses on all of the areas of interest that teens have, whether it's coming of age, whether it's their future, whether it's their family concerns. And this can be played out through so many different genres, so many different styles. I would say that there are not so many things that I consider that are out. Right now, almost anything goes in YA literature. There are a few things that are really getting a lot more attention. To me, YA literature has gotten a lot more introspective, and that's one of the things I think it's why it has such appeal for older audience. I think that one of the things that concerns me about YA literature right now is lack of diversity that we're starting to see. It doesn't reflect the changing demographics in the country at all. So right now I would say YA literature is wide open in terms of the topics that it covers. I do think that to be considered a YA book, there needs to be an immediacy. There needs to be a connection with the young reader and the young reader's issues and the things that they're concerned about. The next question is, where is YA literature going from here? What's the next big thing? Well, if I knew the answer to that, I would tell it to some publisher and then buy stock. But that's kind of hard to tell. I do think YA literature is probably going to continue to have this popular culture emphasis. I think there's some folks who have made the transition, kind of broken through the big areas in popular culture, and their work has kind of brought along many other YA interests along with it. You think about the works of John Green, we think about, of course, the big blockbuster books that have been turned into movies like Hunger Games. I think that we'll continue to see some of that. However, the lack of success from some of the books being turned into movies is probably going to mean that that's not going to be a trend that's going to grow much. There still will be books that break through, but there is no magic formula. Who knows why Hunger Games hit at the time that it did? There have been lots of books of dystopian that had dystopian themes before that, and there were lots that came after, but there was something about that series that struck a chord in so many people, both when it was in book form and in the movie form. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going to be the next big thing. I would hope that all of the things that are going on in YA literature will continue to be expansive and bring in all of the teenagers that we serve in the country. What makes a great book in YA literature? What is your personal evaluation criteria? Of course, I'm always looking for the YA book that has a great story, that has a really authentic voice, that really sounds like a teenager would sound. Doesn't mean that all teenagers sound alike, but it needs to have the voice of a young person. I also look for really solid secondary characters. Very often the books that really I connect with and that I think are especially good are the ones where the secondary characters give us a perspective on the main character and on the situation that the book is exploring that you couldn't have received any other way. For example, I know when I read The Fault in Our Stars, the thing I loved about it, in addition to falling in love with the main characters, was falling in love with Isaac. He was just so funny, and he brought such a perspective to the story. So I think that's one of the things that people connect with when you read a Harry Potter book. It's not just about Harry and Ron, it's also about the Weasleys, it's also about all the side characters. So for me, the books that are the strongest are the ones that have, in addition to the solid main characters, the solid theme, the solid storytelling, authentic voice, is also what do the secondary characters do for us in the course of the story. I also look for a writer that tries something a little bit different. Doesn't mean that every book has to have a lot of literary tricks, but I do enjoy the books where the writer pushes themselves and pushes the reader. When I think about a book like A Northern Light by Jennifer Donnelly, which was a Prince honor book the year I was on Prince, because it told a story both before and after and kind of brought us through a very different timeline and built to a crescendo. I thought that was really so special. It's so interesting that that same year, the first part last, totally different theme, totally different style, but also used a very similar literary device, telling us what had already happened and then letting us see gradually how it happened. If I could recommend one YA book to a teacher to convince them to give YA Lit a try in their classroom, what book would you choose? I've thought about this a lot because I also teach young adult literature, and most of the folks in my class are going to be school media specialists, and they will have this responsibility to recommend books to the English departments in their schools. And one of the books that I have often thought should be taught, because it really has the true sense of Americana, is The Beet Fields by Gary Paulsen. To me, that book will resonate with students so much more in many ways than some of the earlier classics that we often teach in our high school English classes. But because Paulsen's prose is so clear,